CNBC TV18 Young Turks Conclave, powered by SBI Yono.
It is time to actually talk about Da Milano, talk about Just Herbs and Simba Beer and Raw Pressery. These brands represent to our minds the very best of the new players in the consumer market that are changing the way we think of and indeed consume products. These are brands that are India proud. These are brands that are anchored in tradition but global in their outlook and modern in their outreach. Much like the millennials they are targeting. We've seen waves of Indian consumer brands in the past talking on the large scale, global MNCs that operate in this space. But what is different about this wave? To answer this question and share their journeys of building their startups,
what we're going to try and do in the next 15 or 20 minutes is answer the question of why there's been such a shift change in the desire of entrepreneurs to build consumer brands and what's changing in the marketplace that's allowing new consumer brands to emerge in categories that were once dominated by large, big companies, both local and the global FMCGs. You know, I want to start with one question on why the entrepreneurs on the stage started the businesses and how they came up with the idea. Let me start with Shivani.
Actually, Da Milano is a 30-year-old brand. We started our major expansions 10 years ago when me and my husband entered the business. We actually had a base of just a single store, and today we have around 80 stores reaching 100 by the end of this financial year. I think we had a vision when we were given that platform that our product was very strong, and I thought, we thought that this product needs to be taken at least to the Indian markets then. Today our vision is to make it global because we really strongly feel that our product is really widely accepted, and especially at the price points that we are selling at.
I want to come back to you because it's important to understand why and what's changed within the consumers themselves that are now more willing or more accepting to buy made in India, and in many occasions prefer Indian over imported. So Anuj, tell me a little bit about Raw and what started the journey.
Well, for me it started, I like drinking fresh juice. I don't like drinking pasteurized juice made from concentrate. I like consuming things which are clean label, you know, which I'm conscious about the ingredients, and I just felt that there was a massive gap in the market. As I looked around in India, I noticed that everyone in India, no matter if they were young or old, rich or poor, male or female, everyone had Santreka juice, you know, or a Ganga Jamuna or an Narka juice. I think everyone was making juice at home and consuming it. But when we looked in organized retail, we were all drinking something that was not fresh. And so our journey was largely about how can we organize the unorganized market for fresh beverages. And I think it's a sizable opportunity, which a lot of the other large, big food beverage players were not really innovating in. And that's something that we, you know, bounced on and we said, you know, this is something that we can make an impact and make sure that people are not drinking beverages which are just loaded with sugar and which are artificial, unhealthy for you. We think that we can make a positive change in the way that people drink something every day. So that's really what drives us.
Fantastic. Prabtej, Simba Beer. You know, in a country which was once dominated by Kingfisher, you know, what drove you to start Simba, and what was just the story behind it?
So I think to start with, I think India is one of the most difficult markets in the world. It's not one country. Every state, every union territory is a separate market. And for us, it was, you know, when we came in, the only innovation in the product, in our product, was a new bottle, a new color of bottle, or a different kind of packaging. So I think the task was not all that difficult because, you know, we just had to get a very good product out there that was different. We had a very young audience. We had a more exposed audience that has traveled the world, and so we first built our brewery because we wanted to make the product at the center of our attraction for our company, and that's what we did.
And your story, Arish?
Yeah, so I think what egged us on it was basically what was happening was at two levels. So at the product level, I think natural skincare, and Indians have been using haldi besan on their faces for years. But everybody thinks that these are safer alternatives. But at the same time, there is always a trade-off that you're making while using this. So if there's a party you need to go to, you better get a facial at a salon, which is loaded with all sorts of potentially harmful chemicals. So you're always choosing between safety and effectiveness. We found that a natural skincare brand, an Ayurvedic skincare brand that is equally effective while at the same time safe was something that was missing. So that was the gap Just Herbs wanted to fill. That's at the product level. And also at the product development level, we became India's first beauty brand to actually crowdsource product development through social media. So we've created a product called the Herb Enriched Skin Tint, which is a foundation, a 99.3% natural foundation, or a BB cream if you like, which has been made entirely through customer feedback or through Facebook, through a Facebook group. And we continue to do that. We've launched 5 new shades in the product, and our product pipeline is very robust, and we're going to be doing this through social media itself.
So I'll come back to you on the success of NPD using social media. But each of you started a business where there were already dominant large brands. And how do you convince yourself? Is there a concept of MVP, a minimum viable product? What do you do from the idea to testing the product with your friends pre-launch? What did each of you do to convince yourself that this is a journey worth starting on?
So basically, I was just, as I was telling you before the session, I used to live in Singapore, and I was working in the corporate sector, and for my wife and I to leave everything and come back to India was a big decision. And it had to be for a good reason. And when we looked at the market, we saw that beauty has been a very top-down industry. So you basically create trends. You bring an ingredient which does not belong to India, and then you throw money at advertising to make you believe that this is what you need. Okay. But there is one little voice which is missing from all of this, which is the voice of the consumer. What does the consumer want is very different from the top-down thinking in terms of, I hate to say this, but argan oil, for example. What is it that coconut oil cannot do, which argan oil can? It's got nice long-chain fatty acid that's very moisturizing, so why does one even need argan oil? So we wanted to sort of change that. We wanted to sort of disrupt what's been happening for the past 10, 20 years in a very crowded market like beauty. And we've been able to do that to some extent through the crowdsourcing process for a lot of our products.
So we'll come back and talk about how you connect with the consumer, which is a very important point. But if you think of, Anuj, when you started and when I first met you, you had Tropicana, you had Real, and then you came up with the idea of a fresh juice 3 times more expensive in a country which is price sensitive. How do you start and say, you know what, this is something I'm going to spend the next 10 years building?
Well, so if you go back to that conversation, I don't think that we ever liken ourselves to Real and Tropicana. Great respect for large companies and big brands. But really, we're not trying to be like them, so we should not compare ourselves to them. We're really looking at people who make juice at home. And we saw that the people who are making juice at home are already spending a certain amount of money while making juice at home. It's true that we don't calculate the cost of per liter of the orange juice that we make at home. So but what we saw was that a lot of people who are making the juice at home are buying these, say, Valencia oranges, because they're available all year round. Indian oranges aren't. And they're buying it at about 100, 120 rupees a kg. And from 1 kg of oranges, you can actually only get about 40, 45% yield. So from a kg, if you can only get about 400 milliliters or so, and you buy it at about 100, 120 rupees a kg, you're already spending 250 to 300 rupees per liter making the juice at home. So my question was always, how is it that we're buying something for 100 rupees a liter? What's going inside that? So the minimum viable product, as per your question, is interesting because certain products already existed in the market, but they had nothing to do with being fresh. The product that we were really trying to go after was one that consumers were asking for. And so in our MVP research while developing a product, we asked about 5,000 people one very, very simple question. We said, what kind of juice do you want to drink? And unsurprisingly, no one said, give me 10% concentrate, add 80% water, throw in some sugar, add some preservatives. That's the juice I want. Everyone said, I want fresh juice. So we said, that's the MVP. And that's what we really need to go after. And the price sensitivity is, I think, more about value concept and understanding what value consciousness is. And that's where what we make at home is what we really trust. So that's our journey. I don't think we're trying to be like the other brands.
No, good point. Simba, when we spoke before the panel, you said, you built a really large brewery because you were convinced that the market was there and all you had to do was make a good product, which implied there wasn't a good product in the market at that point in time. But what else could you do at that point before committing the capital to build a brewery, to launch a brand in a market that is as competitive as Alcobev, which is 29 different licenses across different states?
So for us, I think it was this conviction that almost any product that you would consume in India, be it all the products of the larger brands, they were only lagers, plain, simple, strong lager, mild lager, premium lager. So I think there was almost nobody that was trying to really say that, beer is not just a lager. I think that became the norm in India, that, a beer is equal to lager. And that was something that was not there. And in our research, when we one example here was that, we never saw girls drinking beer. Like, they always would prefer a lighter beer, a more milder beer. But that was never, today, with the wheat beer that we've come out with, the stout, which is the first bottled stout in India, I think what we're seeing is this openness in the consumer to try new things. They have the willingness to pay for it. They are willing to pay for the lifestyle. They're very happy for it. But they want something unique. They want something differentiated.
I'll come back. It's important to connect what they want and how you identify what they want. But Shivani, the Milano 30-year-old brand, but over the last decade, it's ramped up very aggressively. I live in Singapore, but I see your brand very visibly in shops, at the airports. What's changed? How did you convince yourself that this was the right time to sort of build a much more retail-facing consumer brand?
For us, actually, when we entered the market, there was hardly any competition. The competition has actually come in the last couple of years. And competition has actually helped us build the brand further. Because what happens is when competition enters, the consumers get more choice. And when they realize, when they see the other products, they realize how your product is actually different to their product. So I think that has worked in our favor. So when the international brands actually really came in, instead of our sales going down, they actually really went up because the consumers were realizing that we give better experience and better products at half the price of these brands.
Okay, I want to build on that point and add in two other factors. One is building a brand. Each of you build a brand, most of you build a brand which is brand new, first time in the market, in what was, or maybe argued to be, a competitive market, if not identically in your segment. How do you build a brand and reach a consumer? How do you create a brand narrative that reaches out to an India who is very, very, very young? And how do you differentiate yourself from an incumbent legacy existing brand which is similar or identical? How do you differentiate yourself against a Kingfisher? Or how do you educate the market on what cold press is, what HPP is, and why it needs to be refrigerated? And how do you actually make that connect in a world that's socially and digitally driven? Let me start with you.
Yeah, I think in our category, I think what we saw happening was there's a lot of consumer fatigue that's set in. So the usual narrative is chemicals are bad, we're all going to die because of chemicals, but nobody really thinks that you and I are made up of chemicals and there are phytochemicals in plants. So not all chemicals are bad, right? So just to sort of challenge that narrative is the first point of engagement with a customer. When you're telling them that, look, this is 98.2% natural. So you're being very specific about the naturalness in a product. And the second thing about the millennial consumer we realized is that they like authenticity. So if I'm making a batch of products and I Instagram the fact that we've just created a batch of shampoo and it's freshly made, people actually engage with that more.
When you started, was the competition other Ayurvedic natural brands from India, or were they imported brands playing the natural?
No, I think India has always had a lot of its own natural brands for a very long time. And our competition was not just from them, but like you just said, from the imports as well. So it was a hyper-competitive market where I think telling one thing from the other is still quite difficult in a lot of ways.
Okay. Anuj, yours was slightly different, right? He entered a market where there were other similar brands, both local and imported. When you did Raw, you imported the first HPP machine into India. Many people in the food industry did not know what HPP was. So the whole concept of educating the market, how did that go and how did that factor into how you build the brand?
we've done a lot of things with science and technology. I think we've been kind of farmers and nerds at the same time in building this business. But that's more to do with the product development. I think on the brand front, what we really are very, very clear about is that for us, a brand is a relationship with the consumer. And we try and build, different ways of having conversations with them. I think whether you use social media or whether you do advertising, communication, whichever medium or platform you choose to use, I think the heart of everything that we really try and do is build some sort of a bridge with the consumer, learn from them, share who we are, what our DNA is, what our purpose or value or cultural systems are, and we just grow with them. And I think we're very, very transparent. I think today's brands, whether they're natural or whether they're beer or juice or natural products, I think a large part of it has to do with having conversations and not selling. And transparency is a very big currency in how you choose to do that. And I think that's something that we've done really well.
CNBC TV18 Young Turks Conclave, powered by SBI Yono.
If you think of Simba, you just started the journey. You're available in Chhattisgarh and in Goa. There are 27 unexplored states. People don't know what the brand stands for. As you start the journey of building the brand, as you look at other successful brands that have emerged in India, what lessons are you taking from the Anujas of the world, Shivanis of the world, as you build the Simba narrative?
So I think one is, I think I'll take on what Anuj said, is having a conversation with your customer. Because this customer said you have to really have a very clear, laser sharp focus on them, talk to them. There are more microbreweries than ever. They are actually opening up the market for us. So you talk to your customers, you actually work with them in a lot of ways in order to get them to try your product, tell you what they're not liking about the product, because I think that's a very important bridge that you need to build. And to your question, I think it's more to say that as we are building a brand nationally, I think what's very important is the ability to innovate very, very fast, ability to go out there and say we don't mind taking a couple of risks, launch a product, just see how it works with that consumer segment, and just focus on them for a long enough period of time, and I think you'll get it right.
Shivani, given that every other brand is fairly new, the Milano is 30 years old, you came in, really expanded the business. How did you think about the brand at the point you've entered the business, and how you build the story built on the legacy you already had, because no one else had to deal with that?
I think what we actually did was we sat and defined the values that the brand stood for. So I think that was very important. So we wanted to be a bridge to luxury brand. So we wanted to give the customers a luxury experience at affordable prices. So at every touch point, I feel the customer should feel luxury when at every possible touch point of Da Milano. So whether the customer is seeing our website, whether it's our social media, our creatives, our packaging, I think everything matters. The customer should know Da Milano stands for luxury. And I think that's keeping that in mind, keeping the brand ethos in mind. We've been trying to innovate. We also listen to our customers through social media. That's what social media has helped us all. But we keep everything, like the brand ethos in mind. We try to innovate, we try to listen to the customers and provide them to the very best of our ability.
Okay, I'm going to change gears for a little bit. This is a startup forum, this is Young Turks. And as all brands and all businesses start, you need capital. Some of you have raised some capital, all of you have raised capital. Some have raised venture capital, some have not. I'm going to ask each of you just very quickly, how, when, and why is it the right time to raise some sort of external venture capital? I'm going to ask Anuj, because I've been down the road with him. I want to get your perspective now that you've been some way down the road with a number of investors. How, when, why?
Well, I think capital is important to grow. If you have your personal capital and you're willing to put it into risk capital or venture risk capital, I think you should do it. If you're creating a category and doing something new and you've got great investors, like yourself who can also provide experience and networking, then you should do
Jury's
that.
out on that.
For us, actually, capital was important because we were producing and manufacturing a product that nobody else in India was able to do. And I do think that I wish that debt was more available to young startups, but it's not. I think
don't think there's any debt available to anyone at this point in time.
That's true. But when you have no vintage, no 3 years of balance sheet, you're still a loss-making company in the beginning. You have no banking relationships. It's very difficult to actually get capital. And you can do all the seed funding and the friends and family, but we're trying to build a business at scale. And that kind of requires a lot of growth capital. We do manufacturing, we do supply chain distribution, marketing, branding, sales teams, etc. So you do need that capital. So I think that venture capital has been great, not just in terms of finance, but also the kind of experience that comes with it from some of the investors.
Prabtej, you just started the journey. How are you thinking about venture capital or organic growth? Is there enough cash flow in your business to be able to grow without raising external capital?
So we have enough cash flows to keep going at the rate we are going, but we definitely want to grow faster. There is an opportunity in the market today to create a moat for yourself. I think one thing that businesses, even if you are a cash positive business, you need to start building a very strong moat. And I think capital, using the capital in the right way will be a very good differentiation. Like, using it to create a moat will be a very good differentiator. I think what I've learned, and I've met a couple of founders who've raised money, and we are also looking to raise, we are in conversations with a couple of them. So one thing I've realized is it's not the one who gives you the highest valuation necessarily, it's the one who gets the maximum value add and who aligns with you in your set of values and your company's set of values, that you are in it for the long haul, because this is not a short-term journey, for sure.
It is not a short-term journey. And how did you think about capital over the last 12 years?
No, I think I couldn't have said it better. I think what Arjun and Prabtej, what they said put together, I think definitely it's a no-brainer. You do need money to grow at a fast pace. You can continue to grow at the pace that you're doing. But again, not all money, but money that also brings a value add in terms of what you can get from your investors is equally important. Even I see the world the same way as these guys.
Shivani.
It's a debate that goes on every single day because obviously to grow faster you need more capital. Until now we're self-sustained. Let's see what the future holds.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Our time is up, and I want to thank the panelists for a fantastic session. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuj, Shivani, Deepak, Arush, and Prabtej. Request you all to kindly accept this token of appreciation from our gift partners, Da Milano and Just Herbs. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for our panelists here.
CNBC TV18 Young Turks Conclave, powered by SBI Yono.